how Libyan Islamism is unique to Islamist and jihadist movements elsewhere, and also how the uprisings were not just uprisings which to some extent became supported by Islamists, but they were uprisings which transformed the nature of Islamism in Libya. We look forward to your remarks.
Thank you, Jason. First of all, the story of the Islamists in Libya, it's a not new phenomenon. Basically, during the period of POST-QADHAFI, since he's managed successfully to seize power in 1969, one of the few organizations, relatively small, opposed his theories or his regime or his vision of the new Libya. They were Islamists, including Hizb al-Tahrir, HT. Yeah, well known here in London, making a lot of troubles. Yeah, but they've been destroyed in Libya at the time. I think by 1973, there were no Hizb al-Tahrir members at all in Libya, because at the time they were capable really to challenge him ideologically and from a theoretical perspective or intellectual perspective, especially about the new constitution of Libya, how it should be, and their point of view at the time it was Libya should be an Islamist state. You know, I always prefer to use this term rather Islamic state. It's the Islamist state, that's what they're after. But the other groups or other types of Islamist group, they were extremely weak, including the Muslim Brotherhood, the Salafists. Barely there were any Salafists in Libya at the time. Jihadists, you know, there is no history even for any jihadist movements in Libya. I'm here again referring to the 70s. But I think there's something really funny here, because Gaddafi himself, he tried to weaponize Islam to give himself some sort of legitimacy. I think maybe, I don't know, I have no real answer about that, you know, but I think maybe because the nature of the previous regime, which is the Sanusi regime, was built based on religion as well, in terms of legitimacy. So I think Gaddafi came up with his own very weird mixture of understanding of Islam. Until today, I think we fail to understand exactly what he was after, you know, what kind of Islam, socialism, nationalism, everything is there. And from time to time, I think he came up with different ideas. He said, Islam is only for Arab. Like, period. If anyone is not Arab, basically, he shouldn't be a Muslim. So we thank them to be voluntarily sharing our cause. So this sort of issues, but using Islam and make it part of the political and ideological debate from the highest authority, I think it paved the way for other groups to just involved in that debate, because Libya, it's 100% a Muslim society. So maybe this is one of the explanations. I think the regime itself, of Gaddafi idea at the time, I think it helped or paved the way for a very tough, later on, ideological, based on religion, conflict. Muslim Brotherhood, they, as usual, they are not a large representative group, because usually they start, you know, as elites. They're after students at universities, professionals from the civil servant, intellectual people. That's usually the beginning of the Muslim Brotherhood in any country. Then if they manage to expand or to establish themselves, they will start to expand, you know, to reach the grassroots level in any given country. In Libya, always they were at that level, which is like a very elite intellectual people, well qualified to engage in any political debate. But effectively, they were very weak, like the rest. The Salafists, they started with someone known as Sheikh al-Bishti. Later on, he was killed in 1982, but he was, I can say, the bravest Libyan citizen. Maybe challenged Gaddafi in public for a few, maybe 3 years, every single Friday, you know. He was like, he used his Al-Jum'ah prayer platform every week just to discuss what happened the previous week, during the week, any decisions, any stupid Gaddafi, you know, ideas, and usually it's being discussed in public, you know, in the mosque, in the heart of Tripoli, and it was usually the opposite of Gaddafi's point of view. You know. By 82, Gaddafi get fed up from that kind of like conflict. Unfortunately, he was killed. But that was the seeds of the Salafists, because he was I think, the founder of the modern Libyan Salafist we deal with it now, at this time. Then the jihadists, yeah, they started 82, 83. I know a friend of mine, they started the first cell, if I may say, in Tripoli and in Benghazi, or to think about, okay, the only treatment to deal with Gaddafi disease, it has to be through jihad. And we should form like a jihadi group and to launch an Islamic struggle against Gaddafi, which is based on jihad. This is the general, I think, panorama about Libya. So who they are, I think in general, all the Islamists, they were after one thing, regardless of their point of view, especially in Libya, either during the 70s or nowadays, it's to build an Islamist state. Again, they call it Islamic state, I call it an Islamist state. Because it always depends about which group we're dealing with and the way how they understanding state itself. Most of them, unfortunately, part of the Muslim Brotherhood, because it needs a different kind of like engagement or intellectual engagement to deal with them. But the rest, I think the way how they understand state, it's just like a very big organization. Instead of their small organization, when they get to power, they think of a state completely different from the rest of the world. For them, it's just a very big, mega organization. We're going to use it to go further somewhere else, even beyond the borders. The bottom line, that's my conclusion. So their size in general, before the revolution, during Gaddafi's period, relatively it was small until the mid-80s, but usually it's very small. Cells here or there, intellectual people, thinkers, sheikhs, mullahs, whatever. But their most effective weapon, it was secrecy. And they are the best people, they know exactly how to use secrecy in their favors to try to, survive and to carry on their work despite, the ruthless Gaddafi policies at the time and like zero tolerance when it comes to Islamists. But they managed really to survive because of secrecy. It's a very big story, but just I would like to mention this issue. It's always the most lethal weapon. One of others, but secrecy, it's the most effective weapon used and still used by Islamists anywhere in the world. In the 80s, mid-80s, because of the Sahwa al-Islamiyya, which it's well known as the Sahwa al-Islamiyya, meaning the Islamic awakening, starts in Saudi Arabia, and then it's spread all over the Middle East until it's reached Libya. As I mentioned, Salafist, the way how we know it now or experience now, it's new in Libya. It has no history before Gaddafi or even early 70s. But what is new about the Salafist, it managed, I witnessed that myself, at the time, especially during the university time. It started to recruit at very large scale recruitment, It's very scary for the regime when you start to find thousands and thousands everywhere in the universities. Basically, if you think of the university as a public space, I can claim, mid-80s, it was completely, occupied by the Islamists in terms of like using the power of projection, power of presentations. Even the clothes or the way how they appear, they force a lot of like professors, to stop in certain times to allow students to go to the prayer. Then they, excuse me, madam, one heck of a mess, So it's who's going to control the university, and while these things is happening, Gaddafi and his regime just be watching very carefully what's going on here. And that's why I think I explained it was very painful for Gaddafi, for one reason, because this challenge happened at the ideological level when he has his own ideology, and he thought that's the ground of the new Libya. The second issue, which is more painful, the people were behind him. They are the youth, should be his generation. Okay, all of them are youth, and they should be educated and influenced by Gaddafi's theory about the mass jamahiriya, grassroots level democracy, whatever you name it. And he find out, after maybe 25 years from like dictatorship, this particular group of people, they were against him, and they wanted to sacrifice themselves, even their future as students in the university, because thousands and thousands of people, they get sacked out of the university because of this, including ladies. So the Islamists, they expanded, and they reached many places which has never ever been before, including the south. I can remember people from Sabha, Morzuk, Wadan, even Kufra. They start to, if I say, maybe hooked up with this idea of Salafist. So I think it gave them sort of like hope of opposition, how to, create your own opposition against Gaddafi, and it's very peaceful without doing nothing. Only the way how you appear or change the way how you dress, or if you attend prayer 5 times at the mosque, That means you are sure Gaddafi is angry and mad at his house because you're doing that without even carrying a weapon. So I think it's very, very attractive from that perspective. And one of the important things as well, it's tools. That was the first time when any particular opposition group, either Islamists or liberals or whatever, they find out really why there are inside Libya different tools to oppose Colonel Gaddafi. At the time, it was the cassette. Okay, it's, I think, the most effective weapon against Colonel Gaddafi's security apparatus at the time, it was cassettes smuggled from Saudi Arabia to Libya. I can claim on a daily basis sometimes, believe it or not. Especially when there's like, you know, the season when people, they go to Al-Umrah, which is small Hajj, small pilgrim, and then Hajj itself. Every now and then you'll see people, you know, including my friends, you know, they just smuggling cassettes from Saudi Arabia for different sheikhs, you know, giving them completely different views about life, different understanding of life. Basically, it helped a lot of my generation to shape their point of view about the world itself, and how to see the world and how to unlock the world, including Libya. To the extent when people, they send fatwas, you know, to Saudi Arabia to ask, okay, should I, you know, grow my beard or not? Because it might cause me problem. And waiting for the fatwa maybe for 2 weeks or 3 weeks when it comes from Sheikh al-Medina. I said, no, just, if it's one of the fatwas I can remember from well-known Sheikh al-Medina, he passed away, and I said, look, if it's really, really annoying Gaddafi and his regime, just let it go and grow your beard, just to oppose the regime by this way, you know. And anyway, from practical perspective, that means the Sheikh is not aware of the situation in Libya, because you might get killed, basically, by annoying Gaddafi.
If I can interject, there's a great joke about Musa Kusa, who was the famous spy master for Gaddafi. He's meeting his counterparts, for example, Sir Mark Allen and Indyk in Switzerland. And one of the things they're talking about is, well, you know, we like it if you give up your WMD, but more important is this counter-terror cooperation. And Musa Kusa says back to Martin Indyk, I know the names of every Libyan who has a beard.
Yeah. So it's a new, I think, dimension, you know, of the, in general, Islamist movement, despite it was mainly the Salafists themselves, including to a certain extent the jihadists. And in this period, when the jihadists, they start really to think of jihad and how to make sense of these thousands and thousands of youth, you know, they start to practice Islam from a different perspective. That was when the jihadists based on Sayyid Qutb, especially Ma'arif al-Tariq, the Milton spoke. Myself, I used to teach Sayyid Qutb in Libya in the late 80s before I went to Afghanistan. Because I always describe Sayyid Qutb as the equivalent of the other side of Marxism. If the communists, they have Karl Marx, the Islamists, they have Sayyid Qutb. He weaponized Islam, revolutionized Islam, you know, he gave Islam a different dimension. It's not just a passive set of concepts and ideas or belief. No, it's a very active revolutionary idea. Then, because of Afghanistan, hundreds of Libyans, they start to flee the country and they find safe havens somewhere else, either in Afghanistan itself, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Jordan, you name it, all over the world. Then after Afghanistan, 1993, 94, a lot of ex-jihadists in Afghanistan, they ended up in Europe, including the UK. 1998, Colonel Gaddafi find out there is a very well-organized, structured Muslim Brotherhood organization. They managed really to rebuild the organization to a certain level, so he launched a campaign against them as well. Most of them, they managed to escape the country before they get arrested. They ended up in Jordan as a first step, then all of them, they ended up in Europe. Why I'm saying this? Because the Islamists, they found themselves now at the global stage. Talking about the Libyans for the first time. They were all over the world. Now they're dealing, you know, with the Libyan conflict from a different perspective. They learned a lot from, you know, communicating with other Islamist groups as well. They learned from the society, you know, which is like, if I might say, maybe the host society itself. And I think it's, from my observation, it was very effective how to use the, let's say, the international or maybe the global dimension to make it very difficult for Colonel Gaddafi to feel he's safe or secured. And I can remember, you know, when the first time Colonel Gaddafi managed to rebuild his relation with the United Kingdom, and the first time when Musa Kusa appeared here in UK was, I think, 2003, after he was kicked out of the country in 1981, when he made a very well-known public speech. He said, yeah, we will support the IRA. Yes, and he was the ambassador. St. James Square. So he came back with 12 files, first meeting, and he asked the authorities, okay, we are in business now, we are good friends, you're going to help us or rehabilitate us, but really we need your cooperation, and you have to prove to us like you are really cooperating with us and we have a mutual benefit. So we have 12 files, we need them back in Libya. All of them, they are terrorists, they are bad people, including my name, basically. One of them was one of them, but I know other people, they never ever, being Islamists, they're just pure liberals. So it was very painful for the regime, and it helped a lot of Islamists to educate themselves, to understand what's the meaning of the international community, to understand it's not just Libya itself. If you would like, to do something positive in Libya, you have to take into account, the regional perspective, international perspective. You are not alone in this world. I think the Muslim Brotherhood, honestly, they benefit from that a lot, rather than the others. Okay, then came the reconciliation, and it was Saif al-Islam's initiative, Colonel Gaddafi's son. He adopted a different point of view. He said, okay, now militarily maybe we defeated the Islamists, but these things were never ever going to go away. And I believe that, especially in Libya, when you have 100% Muslim society, So the best thing to do when we are now well established, we are very secure in terms of national security or of the Libya itself. So why we don't go out and start to talk with these guys? Because we are very powerful. We're dealing with them from why we are established our upper hand as a regime. That was his view. And he contacted me, myself personally, and I helped him that, to make it happen, including with the jihadists. Anyway, his father, he wasn't happy at all with this, and a lot of dinosaurs at the time from the hardcore regime revolutionary committee members, they thought it's very dangerous, to give any space to the Islamists in Libya, just keep them out, force them out, and we will carry on our business as usual. Even now the whole world against them, so we shouldn't give them space. If Islam had a different idea at the time. So the benefit of that, I think, of the Islamists, because a lot of them now, they are part of this power struggle in Libya now, and some of them, they are in a very, very powerful position in Libya. And I think they will remain as part of the future of Libya. Some of them, basically, they were waiting to be executed. I visited them at first time, in 2007 in the jail, in prison. They were waiting to be executed because they deserved the death. Now they are very powerful key figures in Libya, hopefully with some different point of view about how to do politics, not from only ideological perspective, but they learned, the interest side of politics. Here again, I think the Muslim Brotherhood, they benefit more than the rest, but